evening, y'all. This is another edition of the Systems Lab Live. I'm just very excited about this particular in the lab. Whenever I have a guest, I'm always like, I wonder if they'll say yes. We'll just see. And we'll just put it out there. But whenever we are in the lab, we really just go in deeper. We'll talk about some systems, we'll talk about processes, but we'll also get the background of individuals and we'll get their story and we'll pull out some good information so that you can better understand not only their perspective and their gifting of what they do, but also how you can apply some of these principles to your life. And it is just my pleasure to have Colie James with us today. It's a family affair for more than one reason. And I didn't do origin story well with Ashley Pendergraph. My notes were left me, but we will do origin story now of how we're actually connected through one of the wonderful business coaches of our time, of this generation.
I agree.
which is Jordan Gill of System Save Me. And one of the things that has been really cool about just even Jordan's journey of just being able to shepherd and cultivate a community of really cool and diverse people that is really focused on doing what you love, being excited about what you're doing, operating in your gift, and creating an offer that not only does get you paid, but also brings the joy and the service to others so that they can be able to achieve the freedom that they need. And so we are talking about the Done in a Day program, curated, architected, and crafted by the one and only Jordan Gill. And I went through the program. Colie James went through the program. And so we have been in the orbit through the virtual conferences, and it's been great to watch Colie and her journey. And there's been a lot of things I've learned about her. And so we're going to talk through her particular journey. She has all the things going on. We were talking backstage about some of the hats that she wears, but she wears a lot of different hats, but that's just not who she is. Those are expressions. This is what I always like to say. These are expressions of who she is. But at the core, Colie, I want you to introduce yourself, what makes you you, and then take us through, your journey a bit. We know that, you do wonderful things with Dubsado and photography and all these great things, but I just want to get that piece. I want to start off with that.
So, hey guys, I'm Colie James. So I'm not going to tell you what my titles are yet. Ashley has mentioned them. But what I'm going to say is that at a core, I'm a teacher. And that's actually what I did before I became an entrepreneur. I just really love seeing people understand something, whether it's something related to their business or back when I was a professor, it was like a math concept, a statistics concept. I love making really hard things easy. And I do that in every aspect of my life. I do it in every aspect of my business. And so being able to help people just really brings me joy. In addition to how I actually help people, which brings me a paycheck, don't get me wrong. But I just really love to help people in general. And so photography and Dubsado setups just happens to be my medium in order to get there, versus before when I was teaching elementary statistics and intermediate algebra and all of the math things that people are probably closing their ears to hear now.
That's good though, in terms of the teaching aspect, because not everybody's gifted in that area. Sometimes it's a learned skill, but for you, what was teaching for you? Was that an outlet? What was that for you?
So the funny thing is, from my mom, I have two other sisters. So it's me and two siblings. And my mom is a math professor. My stepfather is a math professor. And I am the only person who did anything science related. One of my sisters she has fashion degree, but she's bartender. And then my other sister has a degree in computers, but she works as an insurance agent. So I'm the only one that went into the math area. And so from a very young age, I knew that I wanted to teach. Now, originally it had something to do with vacations and not having to work over the summer. I'm just going to be honest. But I mean, like I said, I've always loved helping people. And so even in middle school and high school, like when my friends didn't understand something that I did, I got a lot of joy out of helping them understand. So that's where the teaching aspect comes.
Oh, I like that. I like that one for one. So you were teaching how long? What and also the types of students, like, what were some of your favorite ones that you had?
So my favorite subject to teach in the end was statistics. Like
Wow.
everybody hates math,
Ooh.
but I think, and see exactly, but see, you think about that in a way, and if people can actually help you understand like data and
Mhm.
statistics and how it can be used in the real world, people would appreciate the subject of statistics more. I really do believe that. So, originally I was teaching like calculus. Like actually it's how I met my husband. Funny story. Let's go there.
Yeah.
When I went to Prairie View A&M, which is an HBCU,
Yeah. Yeah.
I was in the math department getting my bachelor's degree, and I was a teaching assistant for Dr. Frazier. And my husband happened to be in the class that I was a teaching assistant for. So it's actually how I met my husband. Now, I didn't start dating him then. It took me 8 more months to say yes to a date. But that's how I met my husband. So, I mean, math and teaching gave me the love of my life. So, hey, how about that?
Oh, I love that. I love that. It gave you the love of your life. You were already, so therefore the passion for it was even more developed. And so you find yourself teaching, and you mentioned that you also had many different, like you taught at many different,
Mhm.
positions. And so did you feel like that was just going to be where you were called?
Oh, yes. Oh, if you asked me if I envisioned my life being what it is now, I would tell you no every day of the week and twice on Sunday. So I got my bachelor's and then I got my master's. And my goal was always to teach at a community college. And at a community college, you don't need a PhD.
Mhm.
So, like when I got my master's, I had applied to several teaching positions in the Houston area. And I actually got one at like a college that was just starting. And I was so excited. And then my husband dropped the bomb. Yeah, I don't want to get a PhD in Texas. And I just looked at him and I'm like, but all I've done is apply for jobs in Houston. Like, where do you want to get a PhD from? And he threw out the Big Ten, which anybody listening that, watches football knows that that's the Midwest, Michigan State, University of Michigan, Ohio State. I don't really understand why he said that, but he did. So we ended up applying to several universities in the Big Ten, and Michigan State is just where we ended up for grad school. I did 2 years in a master's degree towards statistics, and then I was working on a PhD in teacher education.
Wow.
Again, the teaching. I don't have a PhD though. I'm a PhD dropout. I'm a proud one. And that was not for me. It took me a very
Right.
long time to figure that out. But once we moved here to Colorado for 1 year, I flew back and forth every month for research meetings. And
Wow.
at the end of that year, I told my husband, no, I'm done. I don't need a PhD. I don't want a PhD. I don't know what I'm gonna do with my life, but that's not it. So that's how Colie ended her teaching career. I just said I was done. We bought a house. We turned 30. We started fertility treatment. Like I was all about that motherhood.
Wow. So, but I think this is really powerful, because oftentimes we're in something, but things were like going well. Like
Yeah.
it wasn't as if it was like boo teaching. It was like I'm still just going to pursue whatever this path is.
Mhm.
And then was it an idea, a thought? Was it something that was planted in terms of like, I don't know if this is what
Actually,
yeah.
no, it's where
No?
we moved. We live in Colorado.
Yeah.
And like I said, to teach at a community college, you don't need a PhD, but
Yeah.
there are not many community colleges in Colorado. We don't even have that many universities. Like there's 4 big ones and
Yeah.
they're spread very far throughout the state. So there was nowhere for me to teach. And when we came to Colorado, my husband also had an offer at University of Maryland College Park.
Yes.
And I said, we need to go there so
Yeah.
that I can get a job. Because I mean, in Maryland, you throw a rock and you hit like 10 community colleges.
Yes.
If he had chosen to go to Maryland, oh, I would still be a professor. I would still be a teacher 100%. But we came here where that really wasn't an option, like for me to find a job easily. And
Wow.
so then I was like, okay, what else can I do? And then once, it took us a year to get pregnant with Chloe. And then, of course, a year while I was pregnant. So we were here for, I think, 18 months. And then after that, like once I had Chloe, I was like, okay, no, I have to figure out what to do for like 2 or 3 years. like while I'm home with her. But after that, I'm not going back to a classroom. Like I'm not doing that. So that was when I started to think of like entrepreneurship as a path. And I still wasn't thinking about being a photographer yet. That wasn't on my radar either. I was thinking real estate agent, childcare provider. Like I was thinking of those kinds of
You
things.
have a list.
Yeah, but it definitely wasn't where I am now.
Wow. So no, but what I think is cool that in terms of this transition is that, as you all are progressing in terms of life and creating your family, that here we have this decision. Okay, I'm not going to do this anymore, and so entrepreneurship. This is the next step. But you just said something, and correct me. You said wasn't even thinking about photography. Had you never picked up a camera before?
Oh no, I love cameras. I don't think I've ever thought about that as like a career, like a job where people pay you.
Wow.
I was that annoying kid in middle school and high school that walked around with one of those A cameras, the one that took the 110 film.
Yes.
Yeah, no, I was in everybody's face with a camera. I love photography. And the year that I said that I decided, okay, no more graduate school for me. That was enough. We went on a trip to Hawaii and I actually bought my first DSLR before we left.
Oh.
And I shot that entire time on auto, which if there are any photographers in the audience, that's like horrible that I bought this really expensive camera and then just shot in auto the whole time. So I eventually learned how to use my camera when my daughter was born, but I still wasn't thinking about photography as like a career path. Like, no.
Wow. Okay, so you have this DSLR camera. Okay, and so you're sitting around with it, but you're still just thinking about options.
Mm-hmm.
So in your thought process, in terms of what makes sense to you, went from the teaching, that was your jam. But so what were you thinking? Were you thinking like, let me just do something that's gonna make me a lot of money? I want to do something fun. Like how was it? How did things start formulating?
So the funny thing is, for quite some time, my goal was not to make a lot of money. I know that sounds really weird, but
Okay.
before we moved here, I made a lot of money. I was the breadwinner in my household by far. So before we moved here, like all I thought about was money. I was way too overworked. I mean, 70, 80-hour weeks, that was the norm. So when we moved here and things were really slow the first year, and then the second year I was pregnant. And I mean, as part of that story, I should tell you, I ended up on bed rest. So like literally couldn't do anything. And so once I had my daughter, I was like, okay, no, I need to enjoy this, because by that time we were also pretty sure she was the only one that we were going to have. I had a lot of complications. Yeah. And so I was pretty sure she was it. I mean, it turns out she is it. She's 12. She's wonderful. There have been no more pregnancies. But we were pretty sure that she was going to be it. So I had enough time to like slow down and realize that the hustle is not all there is to life.
Wow.
And so like for the first 7 years that I was a photographer, I was what I have recently found out as a term. I was purposefully part-time. So I was home with the kid. I really started my business when she turned 2. Yeah, it was a little bit after she turned 2 was when I actually opened my business. And then she went to preschool part-time when she was 3. And then I increased the time when she was 4. When she was 5, we didn't send her to kindergarten. She did 1 more year of preschool. So it wasn't until Chloe was 6 that I actually had her out of my house every single day of the week. So that's 4 years of being in business where I basically did everything while she was at preschool, like 2 or 3 days a week.
Wow.
And then once she went to school, I was like, yes, I'm going to have all this time. And then I joined the PTA.
Oh,
which, yeah. So I joined the PTA. I volunteered in her school 1 to 2 days a week. So like, it wasn't really, I mean, it was for a long time that I was purposely part-time. I didn't want to be overworked like I was as a teacher before. And so like money just wasn't the goal. And it's funny, everybody has like a salary goal in mind. That was never my goal. So I should tell you what my goal is, because I think it was interesting. I calculated to the hour what my husband made per hour at his job. And I just made sure that whatever hours I worked as a photographer, I made the same amount of money. Now I made way less than him because I worked way less than him because I was still home with the kid or volunteering in the school. But like all I wanted to do was match his hourly salary. That was my goal. And I did that. But I mean, for a long time, I didn't make a ton of money because I just really wasn't working that much.
So, and so what's interesting about that is we hear the opposite of, you're going to quit whatever full-time job and just go straight in. And then you're supposed to work your 70 to 80 in the entrepreneurship so that you can just make all the money.
Mhm.
You were very much, I feel like you said, purposely part-time, but like also, it sounds like you were also purposeful in transitioning into a new phase of who you
Yes.
are, motherhood, new element of being, wife, all these different things. And so you were almost, to me it seems like you were crafting, like, okay, this is like my new chapter.
Yes. I definitely, us moving here was definitely a new chapter. I mean, our marriage got so much better after we moved to Colorado. I mean, the entire time we were in Michigan, we were in grad school, we were stressed. I was, in grad school plus working. Like,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I
It was
think
a grind.
Colorado really changed us. So when we moved here, I mean, recommitted to our marriage, bought our first house, had our kid. And my husband was still doing a postdoc when we were here. So for the first 4 years we were in Colorado, he was doing a postdoc, which is not known for like making tons of money either. And then he took his job at a biotech firm. And so, that came with an increased paycheck. So for the longest, like I said, my only goal with money was to match his hourly salary, because he was paying all the bills. Like I didn't worry about that. I was working so that I knew that when my kid went to school, I could then, really grow and scale my business, to use those words that we all love to, to use. But yeah, very slow in the beginning, working on, making our marriage work, making parenthood work, all of
Yeah.
that stuff.
So I like that, creating the family foundation, creating the way it needed to be. And then you started turning up the momentum. But
Mhm.
so the photographers that I've heard about niching down, right?
Mhm.
There's been a lot of stories where it's like, take pictures of everything, weddings, your dog, you're on the corner at the 7-Eleven. It's everything. But did you have a specific niche? Did
Oh,
you?
yes, I did. Oh, I'm saying I was not one of those people who shot anything. Nope. So the first year that I told my husband, like, hey, I think I'm going to make this like a career, he kind of looked at me and like I had that gleam in my eye where I had a plan. And he was like, well, don't let me stop you. So the first thing that we did was we flew to Chicago and I did a mentorship with a really fantastic senior photographer, which is someone who specializes in photographing high school seniors, not old people, high school seniors.
Okay.
So we went and we did this mentorship. I mean, I spent, I guess, what was a lot of money then. It's not a lot of money to me now, but I did this. And the best thing that I learned was that that was not what I wanted to do as my career. I do not like telling people to pose.
Mm.
I do not like taking pictures of women where the only goal is to make you look great. Like that's not my goal. So then I thought, okay, I think I want to do posed studio newborns, which if anybody listening to this and you know what I shoot now, it's the most ridiculous thing ever. I would never do that. But I tried it out and I was like, that's not for me either. And then I realized that the everyday photos that I was taking of my daughter was what actually brought me joy. And I was like, you know what? There's got to be a way for me to make money at this. So I started doing what is now termed like documentary or lifestyle
Yeah.
in-home photography. But like basically, I tell everyone I will not photograph you outside in front of the mountains. Oh, they're very pretty. There is very lovely where I live in Colorado, but I'm not that person. So I go to your house, I photograph you snuggling in the bed with your kids, making pancakes. Like 2 weeks ago, I
Yeah.
did bedtime. We did dinner outside, they roasted marshmallows, and then I got their bedtime routine. But like that's what I love to photograph.
Wow.
And back when I started my business like 10 years ago, there weren't that many people that were doing that. Like that wasn't a
No.
thing. And so not only was I trying to grow this business, but I was trying to grow this business photographing something that like no one had really ever heard of. Plus, again, I live in Colorado
Yeah.
where everyone wants family photos in front of those mountains
Yeah.
that I just can't seem to get away from.
Right. They want you right in front of the house and all the backdrop. And
Mhm.
and so but you were very much just coming into people's homes. So you come into people's homes and then they just do what they do. Like what?
Yes.
it- okay.
They just do what they do, Ashley. I know it sounds really strange, but I do have a process. So, first of all, I've always felt like you need to show what you want to do. So, like technically the year before I opened my business, I shot all kinds of people for free in their homes.
Mhm.
Like, went into their homes, got all these stories, took video clips, made cute little slideshows. And then when I launched, I had a whole bunch of examples of what I wanted to do because, again, like people weren't doing this. So I really had to show you what I wanted to do because there weren't any other examples out there. So
Yeah.
I would, explain what I wanted to do. No, I just want to come to your house and I want you to do what you normally do. Like, last week when Susie was like riding her bike and you tried to take that picture with your iPhone and it was blurry,
Yeah.
I want to come get you a real picture of that on my professional camera so that you can actually get the photos that happen in your house every day
Yeah.
that you either don't have the capability of, photographing in a good way,
Yeah.
or that even if you do, like, because I get this all the time. Like people are like, okay, but do photographers hire you? Yes, I hire people all the time. Look at my wall. I hire people to come photograph my family because I am really good at what I do, but I cannot photograph my own family and be in the photos. Like that's not a thing, even
No.
with a
Yeah.
tripod, because tripod is not natural. That's, exactly where it is. You got to get your good angle. I mean,
Yeah.
all that good stuff. So, I mean, I was just showing people what I wanted to do. And eventually, what I figured out that was like my marketing epiphany, if you will, was I realized that if I went after newborns,
Mm.
because everybody wants to spend money on their newborn photos and everybody despises getting ready for the pose newborn photos. If I could come into people's houses and get
Yeah.
them right after they had a baby, they would be more willing to tell me yes, and they would be more willing to continue to hire me year after year. So that's how I built my photography business. Was I started with the newborns, and then I just never let people leave me. Like I will just show up at your house every year if you don't hire me. So you might as well hire me because I'm not going anywhere.
I think that is a really cool and unique niche, just how you discover that, because really, even in this day and age of like folks coming out with documentaries and their life stories and things like that, I think it's cool for you to be that person, that family documentarian that
Mhm.
literally is like, little James, and he was like this, or I don't know what that pose is, but you know what I mean?
Yes.
And like,
Like this little. And then,
yeah,
because this month,
yeah,
it really hit me. Like I almost cried at one of my clients' houses the other day. Like they don't know that, but I left their house and I was a little teary in the car thinking about it. One weekend, 3 weeks ago, I shot 3 families that had all been my client for at least 6 years. So we're
wow.
talking about I'm in their house. They've had multiple kids. I mean, and,
Mhm.
and most of them, I've actually met their kids in the hospital because that was the other thing that like really helped me grow my business was I did what's called a fresh 48 for my bestie Kate. Well, she wasn't my bestie then. I met because I photographed her maternity and her fresh 48, and now we best friends and she can't get rid of me. But from that one like session, I can trace like probably 50% of my business back to that. Because when
Wow.
people saw what I would do in a hospital, I would go in, I would take natural pictures, I would take pictures of your older kids coming in to meet the new baby. Like that was
Wow.
what I was known for years. And it's such an easy sell. Like people would literally fill out my contact form and be like, so I saw that film that said meet Henry and I just want that. Like, what does it cost? And how do we do this? Like, I didn't have to do any selling. I didn't have to do any explaining. Like those videos sold themselves. So
Mhm.
that's how I really like grew my photography business. And now with the pandemic, like, of course, I'm not in hospitals like I used to. So, I
Right.
mean, I'm still photographing the clients that I've had forever, but like it definitely, I've had to shift, like, with the world, what
Right.
I was doing to photograph families in the last few years.
So you were doing those types of photos up until like, what is it, 2019, or up
Oh, I'm
until
still doing those. I mean,
okay.
so the
You're
funny
still
thing
doing,
is,
yeah.
yeah. So the funny thing is in July, I did a birth. And when I told a few people that I was photographing a birth, they were like, you're really doing a birth? Because let me tell you, doing a birth is very stressful. I mean, it's a
Yeah.
moment that you can't get back. You also have to be on call for a certain amount of time. And people who know me know I really don't like to be on call for birth because I can't even leave my house. Like if you're delivering north of me, I can't even go to Denver because if you call
Mm.
me and you're in labor, I might not make it to the hospital that's north of me if I'm having brunch in Denver. So it
Yeah.
does severely like limit what I do in my life, which, as you know, I like to be joyful. I like to just do what I want to do. But when someone asked me about this birth, I said, "Oh no, she's the sister-in-law of a client." And they said, "Oh, that's why you said yes." I said, "Absolutely. If she wasn't the sister-in-law of one of my
Yeah.
clients, I would have told her no. I would have gave her a whole list of names that she could have called." But she was like, "No, I'm Rachel's sister-in-law." And I was like, "Oh, well, I love Rachel. Okay, I will
Right.
photograph your birth." And it was amazing. And you know, End of story. I still cry like the moment that the baby popped out. I'm taking photos and video and tears are just streaming because it is the most magical moment that you can be
Yeah.
at. So I am still doing that, but like I'm only doing it for people who know, listen, COVID could change at any moment. If they don't let me in the hospital,
That's
we
right.
don't have to do this at your house. Like, because I'm not
Yeah.
giving a refund. I don't do refunds.
Point blank, point blank, point blank. What was the internal process from I have this camera, I'm just sort of just seeing what it's about, and then you're finding your niche. And when did you, because did you have a moment where you were just like, okay, this is working? Like I've did you have any of those type of ahas of like,
I mean, I feel like after I did the first few sessions that were in home, because
uh-huh.
remember, I told you I did a senior mentorship and I was
Yes,
like,
you
nope.
did.
I did a studio newborn and I was like, nope. I even tried to photograph a family outside and I was like, oh, no, 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 no. So then when I did the first few people in their homes, I was like, oh, no, because I did it, like I said, before I opened my business for a full year. I shot for free, building my
Yeah,
portfolio.
yeah.
I knew then that was what I wanted to do. The
Mhm.
thing was making sure that I was getting people, I was getting myself in front of people
Yeah.
that were willing to pay for it. Because initially, like getting those kinds of sessions is not hard if you're talking to photographers. I mean, I think
Mhm.
every photographer, even if you do something like weddings or pose newborns, you see the value of like having someone come into your home and get those everyday moments that you can't get even as a professional, but like selling it to regular people. Like I said, like that was a challenge. And then once I figured out newborns are the way to get there, like my whole marketing strategy changed. I have tried ads, but I have
Okay.
never run ads for family photography. And here's why. If you run an ad for family photography, everybody that inquires is expecting like portraits outside in front of the
Mhm.
mountains.
That's
So
right.
I never targeted them. I always tried to target pregnant people so that, you're emotional, you're about to have a baby, you want to
Yeah,
make sure that you have really good photos.
exactly.
I mean, I like simple. What does
Simple.
Jordan say? I'm allergic to complicated. Like
Yes.
that's me. Like simple is getting people to say yes when they're having a baby because everybody wants pictures of their baby. And
Mhm.
the thing about marketing is figuring out how to get those people so hooked that they never walk
Mhm.
away. Because the other thing that I started doing after I realized, fresh 48s are great and home newborns are great, I started selling people these yearbooks, which are
Mm.
basically other people call them baby plans. But like I basically was selling people 3 sessions up front for the whole year.
Oh, wow.
Once they do that, they don't leave you. Like I've
Okay.
had very few clients that I've done these yearbooks for that like aren't still my clients, like, 5, 6 years later. But it's just about making sure that your service is so good that they just are like, no, I can't imagine you not photographing my family every single year.
Wow. 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 I mean, you just dropped some major game because I imagine and you come across probably lots of different photographers in your business. We'll shift to Dubsado in a minute, but even just conversations about like up and coming photographers or those that are trying to plant themselves in this industry. What are the top three things that you're telling them? They're just like, Colie, I'm just trying to like figure out my way.
Okay.
Like,
Number one, don't be afraid of your ISO on a camera. So the thing is, shooting inside is very, very, very different than shooting outside. And so it requires a particular set of skills. Like you have to be quick, you
mhm.
have to really know your camera, and you have to get optimal pictures in an environment that is often not full of light. Because like when I go in people's houses, like I can count on one hand the number of clients that I would say have such good light in their house that I could shoot them at the same ISO inside and out. Like it's
Yeah.
very rare. So a lot of people have learned from people who shoot outside and they're like, never take your ISO above 1600. And I'm like, that is complete mess. Like I don't shoot under 2500 in almost anybody's house. So like you see the images that I have on my website, you see that they're
Yeah.
good. Please trust me when I say you can push your ISO. The second thing that I always say is make sure that your messaging is strong. And us as business entrepreneurs, we get it, but photographers often don't get what I'm trying to say. So let me make it clear. Everywhere on your website, it should give the same message. People should not be confused as to what you offer. Even
Yeah.
people who shoot multiple kinds of things, it should still be clear, what you shoot, what your actual offer is, the features and benefits,
Yeah.
which is language that we use, but photographers don't use it. So I just say, make sure it's clear what's included in your session. So those are the two big things that I tell photographers.
Mhm.
And then I tell this to everyone. I don't care what your business is. It's easier to get someone to pay you again if they've already invested in your services. So,
Mm,
like, once someone has paid you one time, you should spend more effort in getting them back on your calendar than you should getting a new client, because their lifetime value will increase if you can just keep them on your calendar so that year after year, yes, you bring in new clients, but like your roster will eventually, like mine is, it'll be full off of the people that you've shot for years,
wow.
because then that makes your marketing a whole lot easier.
Yeah. That's pretty that's good. And I think that that then shifts to, pandemic came, and now, you're not necessarily in the hospitals, you're
Mhm.
not,
Nope.
in the rooms. So what was it that what else were you thinking about doing, like, in this time? Like,
So here in Colorado, and we live in a pretty stringent state, I couldn't go in anyone's houses for 6 weeks. Like for 6 weeks, we were essentially on lockdown. There's not even hospitals. I mean, because to be honest, it was at least a year, maybe 18 months before they started letting like lots of people back in hospitals. Like I'm not currently doing fresh 48s because even if they let me in, they're not letting siblings in still. So like
yeah,
there's no reason for me to let someone book that if you have other children. I'd
yeah,
rather come to your house.
yeah.
But so for 6 weeks, I sat at home and did nothing.
Mm,
And then we came off of lockdown and I was very COVID conscious. I was only going to people's house, like one client per week. And then I was testing like crazy in between. And then I wasn't actually marketing to new people. I was really only doing the clients that were already on my roster. I mean, I would say since COVID started, I've probably only gotten maybe 10, 20 new clients. Like that's it. And we've
right.
been in COVID for how long? Like 2.5 years, almost
Yeah.
3 years now. Um, so no, my current clients, like I was happy to come to their houses because almost all of my client roster feels the same way that I do. I mean, I don't want to say that everybody feels the same political way that I do, but like they really do. Like I make sure that I'm really aligned with my clients.
Yeah.
And so, as serious as I was taking COVID, all of them were taking it just as serious. I
Right.
did have a few clients that would not let me in their house. Like we did
Okay.
their sessions in their backyards because
Okay.
they did not want me in their house. And the funny thing was at that point, they were actually more of a danger to me than I was to them because Chloe wasn't in school. And
Mm,
James was working at a biotech firm where everyone had on masks. No one was really cohabitating in the same spaces. I mean, my husband's a lab rat, so he wasn't a lab by himself like all day. So, I mean, the people had, almost no chance of getting COVID for me. All my groceries were delivered. I mean, but
right.
I did what they wanted. And so what happened during the pandemic was I just went on a podcast with one of my best friends and she was asking me about CRMs for photographers.
Yeah.
And I had been helping photographers like make sustainable and profitable businesses for quite some time, especially if they wanted to do the in-home photography that I do, because there's not a lot of people that teach about that. So I've
Yeah.
been mentoring photographers in that for years.
Right.
But then after I was on Anami's podcast, I was like, wait, I mean, I could do this for people that I'm not mentoring as
Mhm.
photographers. And so I think within 6 months of that podcast episode, like my Dubsado services outside of mentoring were born. And then I almost immediately went from like doing them in a week to doing them in a VIP day. And this was before I even knew Jordan. Like it
Yeah.
took me another 9 months of my VIP day journey before I joined Done in a Day. So I had
Yeah.
a pretty solid, VIP day when I got to Jordan's program. But I just realized that because you were talking about joy backstage, we were talking about what makes me happy. I love making complicated stuff easy for people. And
Yeah.
Dubsado
So
and
good.
systems and CRMs and automations are things that a lot of people want, but they're too scared to implement them because they don't know how to do them right. They're
Mhm.
scared of, accidentally sending someone the wrong email, which, guys, it's okay if you send somebody the wrong email. You will survive. They will survive. It's all okay. But I just realized at that point, I mean, because I loved the business side of photography from the beginning. I
Mhm.
mean, from the moment that I picked up my camera, when I decided that I wanted to own my own business and I didn't ever want a boss again, like I started taking the business part pretty serious. I do have a minor in business administration. Not that I think it makes me terribly, awesome as an entrepreneur, but like I have always been fascinated with
Yeah.
data, with numbers, with
Mhm.
marketing, with like all of that.
Oh, that's good. And that shift that you had in terms of, all right, you've already been doing the mentoring, the CRMs, the systems, and I will agree, this aspect of the systems and strategy and all that, the processes, they just make people like bug out.
Me too.
And they're just sort of like, ugh, like, I mean, and so I think what you're doing in terms of setting folks up for success when it comes to the CRM pieces is just very, it's very instrumental. And I was in a workshop that I was teaching, and someone was like, "Oh, can I just replace ClickUp with Dubsado?" And I was like, eek, eek, eek. And I was like, "Oh, no, ma'am, no, ma'am." I said, "But what you should do," I said, "No, you need to have Dubsado." I said, "For making sure that you get your proposal, contracting, and invoicing,
Make sure you
and
get paid.
make sure you get paid, and make sure that's streamlined and it's housed in one space, and like the differentiating the two tools." So what were some of when you're working with your clients, what were some of their frustrations with Dubsado? Because there is some like misconceptions about the Dubsado. I love the reel that you did. I watched it a couple times. Man, this probably was like maybe last year or earlier this year that you did about the free plan of Dubsado. You did like a reel about that, and about people, whatever the plan, the new
Yes.
thing,
The
you know what
new
I'm
one,
talking.
which is absolute trash.
And
Continue.
then
We're going to talk about this. I'm so glad you brought this
yeah,
up.
and so when I watched it, I hollered so loud because that was, I mean, I already knew what you were talking about, but I laid myself out because I was like, yeah, we got to go into it. We got to go into it.
So the majority of people that I service are photographers, and it makes sense. I mean, I have a lot of street cred in the photography industry, and so it
Yeah.
makes it easier for me to get them to accept me, to hire me for their systems, because the way that I sell it is whether you take my course or you hire me for a VIP day, you are getting my signature system customized for you. So
Yeah.
it makes them feel like, oh, she's in my industry. Like she knows what I need, even if I don't know what I need. So like it makes it easier for me to do it. But what I'm screaming all the time is that you need these automations, you need these workflows. And so what does Dubsado do? They decide, oh, we want this cheaper plan to put somebody in. It's going to be half the cost at $20 a month, but you don't get workflows. So I honestly feel like they created that just to make my life horrible. Like, because then I started getting these flood of messages like, well, Colie, I saw Dubsado had a $20 a month plan. Like, is that going to work for me? And, I'm going to watch my language. So I just politely said, no, that's not going to work. And after a few times, I was like, I need to make a reel about this. So I made the reel where I was basically screaming, you do not need the starter. Please don't buy the starter. I will not talk to you if you buy the starter plan.
Yeah, like that was, I mean, that was so real. And I think because there's an aspect, and I think depending on the system that you have, I mean, you want to look at what they're offering like per tier. And so let's go, if you're going to go all in, especially when it's come to the CRM and the getting the paid and all that, you just want to be able to have what you need.
Yes.
Like, you know what I'm saying? And then not have to sit there and piecemeal because you don't have this piece of it. And Dubsado is really one of those tools that it grows with you. You could be a team of one, or, you have a big team of like 10 or whatever the case is. It works for you. And so I seen the comments on LinkedIn. Calvin asked, what about marketing and travel? I have not seen yet, because Dubsado does a great job of featuring so many different industries. I have not seen one that they've been like, we stay away from, but I don't know, maybe
So the interesting thing is, one of the things that I didn't realize, because, okay, there are a lot of CRMs that were created by photographers, and Dubsado, like their founder, Becca, she was a photographer.
That's right.
So I will just say, like, I realize that a lot of my knowledge is limited to the ones that are related to photography. But Calvin, to go back to your question, like there are specific CRMs for the travel industry that I did not know existed. So if you want to send me a DM, I can ask some of my other systems friends what CRM they would recommend for the travel industry. Because I remember, and there's no way I'll be able to recall that name, even though I have a really good memory. But I remember recently in one of our expert groups, someone had a consultation call with like a travel agent, and they were like, well, how can I make this work? And someone said, yeah, no, you should tell them to check this CRM out, because it is specifically for your industry. So I will say, even though a lot of the CRMs, like you can use them in multiple industries, I do want everyone who's listening to this to like look into whether or not there is a CRM that exists for your industry, because sometimes they have little quirks in them and little automations and little features that like I would never think to like implement, but if it's specific for your industry, they'll be like, oh yeah, like that's an amazing thing. And yeah, so everyone should make sure that they look at the list of like CRMs that were created for your industry first, if they exist. And then you can go to the more broader ones and see, you know, what you get in each of the different CRMs.
No, I think that's perfect advice, because there are, like you said, like even if it was like, you know, if it's hoteling or if it's like whatever, there's
one for lawyers. I mean, yes, there's one for everyone.
There's one, yeah, and they're just like, we've made this software for X because they have specific either language or workflows or whatever the things are that they've built it. And I think that's absolutely that's definitely.
And Dubsado is good for like any service industry. Any service industry,
it really is.
Dubsado will probably hit your needs. I am one of those people that is way more truthful than anybody realizes. Like if you drop in my DMs and you tell me that you want to switch to Dubsado because I've made it seem so great, my first step is not to convince you to do it. And here's my promo code. But no, why don't you like the current CRM that you're using? Because a lot of people are like perfectly happy with their CRM. You know, they're getting what they need from their current one. And so there is no need for you to jump ships. Like, don't let CRMs and other tools be shiny objects where you're just constantly changing. Now, there are some absolute trash CRMs. I'm not going to name them because that's just not nice. But when certain people call me and they're like, well, I have this, I'm like, no, how fast can we get you on Dubsado? But when people tell me that they have HoneyBook, I'm like, well, no, like, let's talk. Like, what are you missing in HoneyBook so that I can give you my honest opinion as to whether or not Dubsado is going to be better or the exact same that you have from HoneyBook. You'll just be in a new system.
I believe you are absolutely spot on, because I'll get the same questions about project management.
Yeah.
And it'll be and it'll be, well, it is apt to replace them all, or should I use Notion, or should I be with Asana, or should I be, you know, with someone so and so.
So many.
It's too many, but I always will go with you know, what is your experience with X tool? What do you think you're missing? Like, let's talk about it, because there's a aspect of sometimes, like you said, we get into the shiny object syndrome, and then the tool wars, app wars, right?
Yes.
And it's really about, okay, with your personality, where your business is at, your personality, you know, where does it all fit, right? And Calvin asked, how do you know if you have the right one? And I don't know if
there's not a good answer for that.
But the right one. But yeah,
if you find an expert, Calvin, and you tell them like what you want your business to do, if your current CRM isn't doing it, they'll be able to tell you if there's another one that would get you where you want to be.
That's right.
The other thing I will just say out loud, like the one thing that is like a no-go for me for Dubsado is if you tell me that you have a team of more than one and you need there to be multiple emails that are hooked up to it or multiple schedulers. Dubsado does not do that. Dubsado will only read one calendar and will only allow you to send out emails from one account. So like when people come to me, if they have a team, that's the first question I ask. Do you all send your emails out of one email, or is that going to be possible? If it's not, Dubsado is not the one for you, at least not yet. I mean, eventually they might get multi-user emails, but until they do, like, that's not your solution.
Yeah, that's so true. And then once I think the beta becomes not beta, then we can get into some of the other features. You know, there you go, Dubsado. That's so good, though. So you're doing the Dubsado, you were doing it in a week, then you switched to VIP day.
I mean, I only did it for 2 people in a week, and then I realized what a VIP day was, and I was like, oh, okay, let me just push this to the side. Because what I've noticed now that was different when I'm younger, because obviously I'm 43, like I just feel like as I go in age, like my capacity to focus is less. And so VIP days are not only great for my clients because they get what they need in a short amount of time. It really helps me focus and like not get distracted by like my kid or other clients asking me questions. Because on VIP days, like I turn my do not disturb off. Like I only check Instagram at lunch. Like I got rules and boundaries to help me get stuff done. But I mean, once I just realized that, I was like, no, because I'm one of those people, and I will say this, and then I will say what Jordan said the other day on a podcast, which was hysterical. I'm one of those people that if I'm presented with next day shipping or same day delivery, oh, I will get it even if I don't need the object the next day. Like, I just like for the transaction to be done and for me to get what I need. I feel the
Yeah.
same way about VIP days. But Jordan mentioned on a podcast recently, she goes, it's like when you're at Disneyland, you pay the extra money to get in the fast pass lane. And I was like, that's what I'm going to say from now on, because y'all know how I feel about
Yes.
Disneyland.
Absolutely. Before we get to that piece of it, though, one thing that I think is I've marveled at just your ability to know what works, what doesn't, and making that shift. Did you always have that, or were you
Yes,
just
I am a very analytical person. Even like, and it's one of the things that I like about teaching. So, like, let's say I was trying to explain to someone how to solve a quadratic. I mean, this is going years back. But like for me, it wasn't just enough to explain it to my students how you get from the beginning to the answer. Like if they gave me a wrong answer, I had to be able to figure out how they got there so that I could correct their error and then teach them the right way. Like that's just always how I've done like teaching math. And so when I started, being a photographer, like when people would give me pictures and they were really bad, I'd be like, okay, well, let's look at your settings. Let's figure out what we could have fixed in your settings to make this a better picture. And then when I started doing Dubsado, I mean, it's just like, it's like puzzle pieces. It's like, you tell me what you want. I'm going to tell you what I think you need. We're going to meet in the middle, and I am going to find the most streamlined way to get that done for you inside Dubsado. And if Dubsado is not the tool, I will tell you what I think that you need, and you can go on your merry way. Because the thing is, people ask me this all the time, but Colie, like, I love you, but I also love HoneyBook. Can you just put your process in HoneyBook?
Ooh.
And for a really long time, I really thought that's where my business is going. Like when I created my Dubsado course for photographers,
Right.
I specifically don't have the name Dubsado in it because I thought Dubsado was just going to be the first edition. Like I thought there was going to be a version for HoneyBook and a version for 17 Hats and a version for Tave because I know how to get it done in all of those CRMs. But what I realize is I just don't want to. So I'm not gonna.
That's
So
it.
that's my new phrase now. I just don't wanna, so I'm just not gonna.
Like, and I think that's something that I believe people should take away. And I think for me, like just in my own journey of what I'm figuring out right now, there's just certain things where it's like, no, it's just
it's just no. I have 3 reels on that. 3 reels where it says something like, well, Colie, could you do that for me on HoneyBook? No, I just don't want to.
I just don't want to. And there's a difference between like wanting to just innovate whatever it is within the scope versus like stepping like way outside the scope and just, and it just doesn't work for you. So
because again, it's like my attention, Ashley. I think if I had started doing this 5 years ago, I definitely would have had the capacity to like do VIP days in Dubsado, do VIP days in HoneyBook, do them in 17 Hats. But again, I'm 43 years old and I don't have that brain capacity anymore. I need to focus on the one that I find easy, that I can just spit out everything off the top of my head. And I mean, there occasionally, there's things that bug me about Dubsado, things that I don't know, things that I'm like, that's not working and I don't know why. So I either have to troubleshoot it or I have to ask my group of experts because chances are somebody in that group has come across it. But I can't do that for 3 different CRMs. I don't have the capacity. I just can't.
Yeah, no, and I think that makes sense. I mean, you're honoring just what you do and what you have capacity for. And as you started seeing the VIP day magic work and that multiplying, and then so and we'll go and let me just set this up for people who have not gone on your Instagram and don't know who you are and all this good stuff. But like, so it's the Disneyland situation for me. Like it's the Disneyland.
I knew that's where you were going. I'm like,
it's like
pictures.
Every month you're going.
Well, we're not anymore. So let me just tell you.
Yeah.
So what happened was I bought an annual pass for myself in 2020. And what happened in 2020?
Yeah.
COVID. I didn't get to go not one day on my brand new pass. I actually got a full refund in November from Disneyland. Like they just sent everybody refunds. Well, because Disneyland itself was actually closed for more than a year. Like no one went.
Right.
And then this past June, I think it was, they opened back up for California people. And then it wasn't until July when they opened up for us. And the moment that they opened for us, I bought us a family vacation to go. Now, so we went for Chloe's birthday. Actually, that's where that picture's from, me with my
Right.
little ears behind me. So we went, and then they announced that they were going to sell passes three weeks later. I was so mad, girl, because that was just outside the window of being able to apply what I had just spent on that vacation towards those passes. I was hot. I was angry. But as you know, I still bought my pass.
Yeah.
Now, as kind of like a COVID casualty, my kid has been home with me since what, March of 2020?
Yeah.
So she did like this virtual learning where she was on calls with her actual teacher for the rest of 2020. And then when the 2020-2021 school year happened, she did that again with her exact same teacher from her school. We were really blessed. I mean, I loved her teacher. It was a really good experience. And then in 5th grade, we moved her to completely virtual because I just still didn't want to send her back. Like, part of it is I didn't want her to be in the schools with COVID. But the other part is, remember, guys, I'm still photographing families with small children.
Yeah.
Like, I can't take the risk that my kid brings COVID home from school and then I pass it to all of my clients when I am very intimately in their house with my mask on, even then.
Right.
But getting back to the Disneyland, because that's what you originally asked me about, because she was homeschooled, when I bought us that pass last August, we went every month for a couple reasons. Number one, I decided that for every year that we homeschool, or every month that we homeschool, that was our treat. Plus, tickets were really cheap, y'all. I mean, like $59 each way.
Wow.
Plus, I was really kicking it at VIP days. And so I was like, I am making more than enough money for me to pay for all these Disneyland, like above what I had made the previous year, if you will. So I was like, I can afford to do it, and can't nobody tell me different. I told my husband, don't talk about it. So we did that for technically we did it for 14 months. So August of 2021, all the way until September of 2022, we went every single month. We are not going this month. And we are actually not, we're going at the very end of November, but now we're going to go like every 3 months, like normal people probably do. Or, I mean, you know, at least what might maybe be considered a little bit more normal. But, you know, it was a really good thing for us to do for a year. And I will forever be grateful that, you know, my business scaled to 6 figures. I was doing all the VIP days because I could afford to do it. And now my kid has, you know, all those memories of us going to California every single month to go to Disneyland.
I mean, if she's not the only one, she's in like a group of 5, probably like,
well, you know, people go to Disneyland all the time, but I think what makes us different is the fact that we don't live there. Like the bus drivers would always be like, you were just here last month and you don't live here. I'm like, yeah, I'm like $59 tickets. And then everybody's like, oh, okay. But I will tell you, those tickets are getting a little bit more expensive right now, which is why I was like, with increased plane tickets and increased hotels, like it doesn't make, I mean, I get to say that we went to Disneyland every month for a year. I think that that's something that very few people can say. And so it makes us special, and I'm good. We did it for a year. I don't need to be special anymore.
We're done with that. We're done with
that. Yeah.
No, I love that aspect of it. Another thing, you know, just in terms of observations, we've talked about so much, but I believe in what we were talking about backstage about finding happiness in what you're doing, finding joy. You know, I'm go to the website, I'm reading, I'm listening to you, and there is a light that just comes out, not only in like just the sessions that you do, you know, just looking at your clients, but just in pictures with your husband and your daughter, you know, just in you know, and just in everything you do. So did you have a journey to joy? Were you always joyful? You know,
that's a good question.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, 8 years of my marriage were completely miserable. I tell it to everybody. I said eventually I'm gonna have a podcast episode on it. But like, we experienced a loss, pregnancy loss the first year of marriage. And I just really think that wrecked us for a really long time. And I didn't realize it until it was like, you know, too late. Or I guess it wasn't too late because we're happy now. But like the entire time we were in Michigan, we were stressed. We were not good to each other. I mean, and then when we moved here and, you know, things got better. I mean, now I really am happy. And the thing is, I think I know what unhappiness is. And so I don't ever want to go back there, not in my marriage, not as a parent, not as an entrepreneur. Like, I mean, that's why I don't think I could ever have a boss again, like ever again in life, because they just suck all of the joy out of you. But no, I mean, you know, we moved here and I mean, we've made sacrifices. Like, I mean, before when I was making tons of money, I just used to travel whenever I felt like it, which I know it seems like I travel a lot now, but believe me, I traveled even more than this before we lived in Colorado. But you know, life is too short.
Mm-hmm.
And so once you figure out what it's like to really be happy, I think that it's on you to like, work to make that happen. So it was
Right.
really funny. We were at IKEA and it was me and my husband and my mom and my daughter. And I don't even remember what she asked. Maybe she asked about divorce. I don't know. And daddy goes, "Oh no, mommy and daddy work really, 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 really hard to not get divorced." And I looked at him and I was like, "Do we need to talk about something?" And he was like, "No, I'm just trying to make sure that she knows that like
Yeah.
she's our priority in our marriage." And I was like, "I know, but you said like 6 different reallys." I was like,
Really?
"Do we need to talk about
It was-
something?" I mean, it was just like, but like I do feel like we're in a place where both my husband and I realize that, it's a job. I mean, to put, each other first and
yeah.
to make sure that we're happy in our marriage. And I mean, it makes us better parents. It makes us better people in general. And so, I mean, it took a lot to get here. I mean, we've been married for 21. It'll be
20.
22 in March.
Wow. That's
Yeah. So,
amazing.
I mean, I know I don't look old and I didn't
No.
get married, in high school, but I mean, we were grown adults when we got married, but
Right.
we've been together so long that there was just a really, there was a period of unhappiness. And when we got over that, I was like, okay, no, I don't need to be that unhappy. So let's not do that in any aspect of our life. Like my husband had a job change this year and he did the
Mm,
job change and he is
wow.
100% happier at his new job than he was at his old job. So like,
Wow.
it's not just me, like
Yes.
together we make it work to where, we don't have to have unhappiness in any of the aspects of our lives.
Oh no, that's beautiful. That's beautiful. And so in that translates, I know for his work and then for your family and then for
Mhm.
what you're doing. And so you in terms of expansion, because you're doing the first 48, in the hospital, Dubsado VIP days, Disney land every month, right? And then you start to then move into podcasting.
Mhm. Which
Because
is fun.
I'm thinking that because the different outlets, right, of sort of how you are expressing yourself, you have all that knowledge of mentorship. So what was the prompting of the podcast? Business creatives, right? Business creatives.
Mhm.
Yeah, what's the prompting behind that?
I'm just going to be 100% honest. I like talking, and most
Yeah.
people think that I have something to say when I talk. And I was like, podcast sold. I need a podcast. Now, granted, Ashley, I have been thinking of a podcast for like 2 years.
Yes.
Like, I think it's been two
Yeah.
years.
Mhm.
And then finally, Jocelyn
Yeah.
from Connect Through Content, I hired her for a VIP day. What do
Yeah.
you know? A VIP day. And we basically strategized because the podcast that I have now is not actually what I thought I was going to do. The
Ooh.
podcast name that I had before was Keeping It Real with Colie, which I know you'll agree was a good name, right? Jocelyn kind of backed me off of that. Jocelyn
Okay.
was like, "Well, I think we should do business first photographers." And
Okay.
then I was like, "But no, I don't want to just talk to photographers. I want to talk to all entrepreneurs." So that's where we ended up at Business First Creatives.
Okay.
But in that VIP day with Jocelyn, she gave me the strategy for my podcast. We talked about the episode types. We laid out like all of the things. And the funny thing is, Jocelyn's like, "You are my one client that implemented everything in less than 3 weeks." I was like, "Yeah." Because when I hired her, I said, "Well, how long do you think this is going to take?" She's like, "Well, most people take 4 to 6 weeks, maybe 2 to 3
Mm.
months." I was like, I'm trying to do it by the end of May. Like, I
Right.
need my
I'm trying to
podcast
get
out.
it out. I'm
I was
trying to
like,
get
because
it.
otherwise it will just sit on my to-do list like it has been for 2 years. So
Yeah.
literally, I had my VIP day with Jocelyn on May 5th. And by May 28th, I had the trailer recorded. I had it up on
Already.
Apple
Yeah.
Podcasts. And I had like 2 episodes recorded with guests. I mean, like, I was like, no, let's do this.
Yeah.
So that's where the podcasting comes from. I like to talk
Yeah.
a lot. But the
Absolutely.
other part is like that affects us as entrepreneurs is I hate creating social media content. I will say I love to go on stories. So if anybody decides to follow me on Instagram, I'm Colie James. My stories I think are hilarious. But other than that, like what you see in my feed, I legitimately
Yeah.
hate creating that content. Like I hate it. And so once I created the podcast, it's long form video that can get chopped up and can get
Yeah.
reused and repurposed. And it
Yeah.
also, like, once I did the podcast, it pushed me to start blogging, which you and I talked about backstage. Like, that was one of the things that made my photography business so successful was I had really strong SEO from year one because I was
Yeah.
blogging constantly. And then once I created the podcast, I got into the habit of blogging again, which again, it's going to help me with my business. So that's why podcasting. I mean, I love it. I love talking to people. Now, I will say though, the solo episodes are a struggle. Like I cannot sit here and talk to a computer screen when there's not a smiling person like you, Ashley, to talk back. Like I struggle
Right.
hard. And if you listen to my solo episodes, they sound so different than when I'm
Hmm.
interacting with someone. So I haven't quite gotten over that yet. But I love podcasting.
Right.
It's going to stick. Yeah.
It's gonna say, yeah, I feel the same way. I think it's fun, and again, being able to talk about your subject matter expertise, or even just talk about what you're learning. Like, there's like a lot of runway of what you can do, and I listen. I love the one with the researching like the customer research content with
Mhm.
the young lady across the pond. Yeah,
Yeah. With Nadine, she's awesome.
yeah, that was super cool. That was super cool. So that is awesome, Coley. Now, let's just land this plane, because we've talked about so many things from your, from the journey from where you started to, what exactly kind of made your transition. And I want to kind of leave the people with a few things as we are in the last quarter of this year. And if you happen to listen to
Mhm.
this even in the new year, just some applicable strategies that business owners, entrepreneurs can take
Ooh.
when it comes to A, like making decisions, B,
Mhm.
just navigating like your path, and then C, just not being afraid.
Yeah, I mean, I love all of those topics. I've talked about all those topics on my podcast. I just like those are the things that I love because it's funny. Like one of the things that I tell people that I solve for you is your decision, your decision fatigue. I think
Mm,
people just get so they get so afraid to make the wrong decision that they don't just make a decision. So what I
that's
would say
right.
about that, guys, is any decision that you make in entrepreneurship can be pivoted, can be changed, can be reversed. There is almost nothing that you can do in your business. I mean, even closing it, because if you close it, you can just reopen it. There is nothing that you can do in your business that cannot be undone or changed. But what I
Mm,
will say, and maybe this is just the photographer speaking in me, because when it comes to raising your prices, if that's a decision that you need to make, I feel like photographers raise their prices, and the first three people that tell them no, they're like, oh, my prices are too high. And then they immediately reduce them. So, what I want to tell people is when you make a decision in your business, you should automatically have a plan for how long you're going to see it through
mm,
before you make any changes, before you make any pivots. Because sometimes immediate gratification is definitely a thing, guys. We all feel like if we make this, decision, whatever it is, that the benefits are just going to immediately come to us. Like podcasting, Ashley. Like I'm not making money off that podcast. It's going to be a long time before I make money, before I get
yeah.
leads, before I do any of that. And if I only put out, I think I'm about to be on episode 20. If I only put out 20 episodes and I'm like, oh, well, no one's hired me from my podcast, it must be bad. Let me change my marketing strategy. Yeah. So that's the number one mistake that I see people making is not making a plan to stick with it. And then also having a way to measure its success. So
Yeah.
like my podcast downloads are increasing. The number of people that are contacting me on Instagram to say that they learned something from an episode is increasing. And so those are
Wow.
the things that I'm using in order to measure whether
Yeah.
or not my podcast is moving in the right direction. And I'm sure that there's something that everyone can measure in their own business that will do the same thing from them.
That's right.
And then in terms of the pick your path, I'm a firm believer that if it does not make you happy, you should stop doing it. Like there's a difference between you doing a service to get the money in order to push your business in a different direction,
Mhm.
or you just continuing to offer services with no end for something that doesn't make you happy. So as the new year approaches, I think everyone should sit down and look at their numbers. And not only that, but also figure out how much joy your current service brings you. If you are not reaching the clients that make you happy, if you are not making the money that makes you happy, hey, Q4 and Q1 are perfect opportunities to make some changes in your business so
That's
that you can actually have a business that at the end of the day makes you happy.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Listen, everyone, this has been another edition, a very special edition of the Systems Lab Live, because we're in the lab with Colie James. It's a family affair. And yes, thank you so much, Colie. We have your information in the notes, and people can get in touch with you and follow you, your stories, of course, and your podcast, and just be able to slide in the DMs and just
I like people sliding in my DMs, y'all. No lie. I like
and
it. I like
have
it.
and have the conversation. Thank you so much, Colie, for being on the show. You all, we'll be back next week. You know, it's a brand new theme. It's called The Inside Job, and we're going in deep. We're going to be talking about work management, some cool things about project management, and we're really looking at how we're reimagining the way we're doing work on an everyday basis. We're kicking that off Monday. Be there or be square. I don't want you to be square, so I want you to be
She
there.
wants you to be there.
I want you to be there. And so we'll see you guys, and we'll talk soon. Bye.